Welcome to Moonlit Inc. BL. A BL story written under moonlight. Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Fatal Typo. The blue light of the dual monitors was the only thing keeping Travis Levine awake. It was 3:14 a.m., and the air in his cramped studio apartment was thick with the bittersweet, floral scent of osmanthus, a telltale sign that his stress levels were peaking. Almost there, Travis whispered, his voice raspy from disuse. He was a freelancer, a digital ghost who lived and died by the quality of his encryption. His current client, an alpha named Kyle, had been breathing down his neck for 3 days about a data mining project. Kyle's scent, even through the brief physical meetings they'd had, was a sharp, aggressive cedarwood that always made Travis's neck hair stand up. He just wanted the job done so he could get paid and sleep for 48 hours straight. A notification pinged. "Kyle, I need the server bypass coordinates now, Travis. The window is closing. Send it to the private secure line I gave you." Travis rubbed his eyes, his vision blurring. He pulled up the encrypted string, a complex sequence of numbers and symbols that served as a digital keyhole. He switched to his secure messaging app and began typing the recipient's frequency. 0-9-1-4-3-7. His finger hovered over the screen. His brain, foggy with exhaustion, slipped. Instead of a 7, he pressed a 1. He didn't notice. He pasted the bypass code into the message field and hit send. The delivered checkmark appeared instantly. Travis exhaled, leaning back in his creaky office chair. The osmanthus scent in the room softened slightly, turning sweet and relieved. "Done," he muttered, closing his laptop. 2 minutes later, his phone vibrated on the desk. It wasn't the secure app, it was a direct, incoming transmission from the number he had just messaged. Travis frowned. Kyle usually just sent a thumbs up. He picked up the phone. There was no contact name, just the string of numbers he'd typed, the one ending in 1. The message read, "Unknown, who is this, and how did you get this number?" Travis froze. A cold prickle of dread washed over him, turning his scent from sweet osmanthus to something sharp and metallic. He double-checked the number he'd sent the data to. "Oh, no," he breathed. No. He hadn't sent the key to Kyle. He had sent a military-grade decryption bypass to a private, high-security line. He scrambled to hit the delete for everyone button, but the app flashed a red error, transmission locked by recipient. A second message appeared, scrolling across his screen like a death sentence. "Unknown, I am tracking the origin of this ping. You have 60 seconds to explain why you are attempting to breach the Kingston private cloud before I send a recovery team to your coordinates." Kingston. The name hit Travis like a physical blow. There was only one Kingston in the city who mattered, Austin Kingston. A man whose reputation for ruthlessness was so legendary it was whispered about in hushed tones even in the deepest corners of the dark web. A cold-hearted predator who didn't just sue his enemies, he erased them. Travis's heart hammered against his ribs. He looked at his door, then back at his screen. The osmanthus scent in the room was now a frantic, cloying cloud. He had just knocked on the door of the most dangerous alpha in the corporate world, and he'd done it with a key to the man's private life. He didn't have 60 seconds. He didn't even have 10. From the street below, the muffled screech of high-end tires echoed through his thin windows. Chapter 2, The Tracking. The silence in Travis's apartment was deafening, broken only by the frantic thrum of his own pulse. He stared at the glowing screen of his phone. 60 seconds. The countdown was a digital noose. He scrambled to his feet, knocking over a half-empty mug of cold coffee. The scent of osmanthus was no longer a delicate bloom, it was the sharp, ozone-heavy fragrance of a storm about to break. "Think, Travis. Think," he hissed to himself. He lunged for his bug-out bag, a battered canvas backpack stuffed with a spare laptop and hard drives. He didn't have a plan, only the primal instinct of an Omega who knew a predator was closing in. He reached the door, his hand trembling as he fumbled with the deadbolt, when the hallway outside erupted. The sound wasn't a knock, it was the heavy, synchronized thud of tactical boots. Tum. The door frame groaned. Tum. On the third strike, the wood splintered, and the door flew inward, bouncing off the wall with a violent crack. Travis stumbled back, tripping over his own feet and landing hard on the floor. 3 men in charcoal gray tactical suits flooded the room, their movements fluid and terrifyingly efficient. They didn't draw weapons, they didn't need to. Their presence alone, the heavy, neutral scent of beta dampeners, choked the air. "Target secured," one said into a lapel mic. Then, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. A figure stepped through the ruined doorway, silhouetted by the dim hallway light. He was tall, dressed in a bespoke midnight blue suit that cost more than Travis's entire apartment building. As he stepped into the room, a wave of sandalwood hit Travis, rich, ancient, and suffocatingly dominant. It was the scent of a man who owned the ground he walked on and everyone standing upon it. Austin Kingston. Austin didn't look at the disarray of the apartment. His icy, predatory gaze was fixed solely on Travis, who was still scrambled on the floor, looking small and breathless. "The osmanthus is strong," Austin remarked, his voice a low, melodic growl that vibrated in Travis's chest. He sounded bored, which was infinitely more terrifying than if he had been angry. Usually, spies have better control over their pheromones. I'm not a spy," Travis managed to choke out, his throat dry. He tried to crawl backward, but his back hit the legs of his desk. Austin walked forward, his polished Oxfords clicking rhythmically on the hardwood. He stopped inches from Travis's knees and knelt down, invading Travis's personal space with the casual grace of a panther. He reached out, his gloved fingers catching Travis's chin and forcing him to look up. "A freelance analyst with a penchant for high-level encryption," Austin murmured, his eyes scanning Travis's face as if reading lines of code. "You sent a bypass key to my private frequency. That isn't a wrong number, little omega. That is an invitation." "It was a typo," Travis cried, his voice cracking. "1 digit. I was supposed to send it to a client. It was a mistake." Austin's grip tightened slightly, his thumb brushing against Travis's jawline. The sandalwood scent intensified, turning dark and possessive, swirling around Travis's floral aroma until the osmanthus felt trapped, wilted by the heat of the alpha's presence. "In my world, there are no mistakes," Austin whispered, leaning in until his lips were inches from Travis's ear. "Only vulnerabilities. You've exposed one of mine, Travis Levine. Now, I have to decide whether to patch the hole, or keep the tool that found it." Austin stood abruptly, signaling to the beta standing by the door. "Bring the hardware. And bring the boy. He's coming to the penthouse." "Wait. You can't just," Travis started to protest, but a beta, Simon, was already hoisting him up by the arms. Austin turned at the doorway, looking back over his shoulder with a cold, enigmatic smirk. "You wanted to send a message, Travis. Consider it received. Now, you're going to show me exactly what else you're capable of." Chapter 3, The Collateral Debt. The elevator ride to the Kingston penthouse was a silent, pressurized torture. Travis stood huddled in the corner of the mirrored car, his reflection looking pale and frayed against the backdrop of Austin's towering, immovable frame. The scent of sandalwood had settled into something heavy and cold, like the air in a cathedral. When the doors slid open, they didn't reveal a home. They revealed a fortress of glass and white marble overlooking the city's glowing arteries. "Sit," Austin commanded, gesturing toward a modular leather sofa that looked more like a gallery installation than furniture. Travis sat, his hands tucked between his knees to hide their shaking. The osmanthus scent of his anxiety was starting to sour, turning sharp and acidic. "Mr. Kingston," a composed voice called out. A woman stepped into the light, her movements graceful and her expression unreadable. She wore a sharp charcoal blazer, and as she approached, the calming, sweet drift of jasmine cut through the oppressive sandalwood. This was L, Austin's primary secretary and a fellow Omega, though she carried herself with the steel of an alpha. "The digital forensics team is on standby, sir," L said, her eyes flickering briefly to Travis with a look that wasn't quite pity, but something close to warning. "And the non-disclosure agreements are drafted." "Good. Give them to him," Austin said, pacing the length of the floor-to-ceiling windows. He didn't look at Travis, he looked at the city he owned. "And L? Bring him something to eat. I don't want him fainting before he finishes the audit." L handed Travis a tablet loaded with legal jargon. "Sign," she murmured. "It's better if you don't fight the paperwork, Travis." "I'm not a criminal," Travis whispered, looking up at her. I typed a 1 instead of a 7. "In this building, a typo is a bullet hole," Elle replied softly, her jasmine scent pulsing with a hint of sympathy. "And Austin Kingston doesn't like being shot at." Austin turned, his eyes tracking the exchange. He walked back to the sofa, looming over Travis. "You're going to spend the next 48 hours tracing every packet of data that leaked through that coordinate. You're going to find out if anyone else intercepted that ping. If you find nothing, you're a lucky man. If you find a breach..." He trailed off, his gaze dropping to the pulse point in Travis's neck. "What if I find a breach?" Travis asked, his voice barely audible. "Then you're mine until the debt is paid," Austin said. It wasn't a threat of violence, it was a threat of total, systemic ownership. "You'll work for me. You'll live here. You'll be the shadow that fixes what you broke." Travis looked at the tablet. The contract wasn't just for a job, it was a collateral debt agreement. It essentially signed over his freelance license and his physical location to Kingston Industries indefinitely. "And if I don't sign?" Austin leaned down, his face inches from Travis's. The sandalwood scent became a physical pressure, a dominant alpha command that made Travis's knees weak. "Then I hand the logs over to the federal authorities. A security breach of this magnitude carries a 20-year sentence. I imagine an Omega like you wouldn't enjoy state-run housing." Travis felt the trap snap shut. He was a freelancer with no backing and no family. To the world, he was a ghost. To Austin Kingston, he was a toy that had accidentally tripped a silent alarm. With a trembling hand, Travis swiped his digital signature onto the glass. "Excellent," Austin purred, his voice returning to that terrifyingly smooth chill. He straightened his tie. "L, set him up in the secondary office. And lock the biometric exit. He stays until I say he's done." As Austin walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing on the marble, Travis realized he hadn't just mistyped a number. He had accidentally assigned his entire life to a man who didn't believe in mercy, only in acquisitions. Chapter 4, Boardroom Predation. The glass and steel monolith of Kingston Industries felt like a predator's den, and Travis was being led straight into its heart. He wore a suit provided by L, a slim fit, charcoal wool that felt like a secondary skin, far too expensive for a freelancer who usually worked in oversized hoodies. "Keep your eyes on the data, Travis," L whispered as they approached the double mahogany doors of the main boardroom. Her jasmine scent was spiked with a hint of sharp concern. "Don't speak unless Austin looks at you. And for heaven's sake, try to keep your pheromones neutral. The board is full of unbonded alphas." Travis swallowed hard. His osmanthus scent was already fluttering, a sweet, panicked edge that he couldn't quite suppress. The doors swung open. The room was a vacuum of power. A dozen high-level executives sat around a table that looked like a slab of obsidian. At the head of it sat Austin Kingston, looking utterly detached as he flipped through a digital brief. When Travis entered, several heads turned. The air grew thick with a cocktail of aggressive alpha scents, tobacco, burnt ozone, and salt, all testing the newcomer. "This," Austin announced, his voice cutting through the low murmur of the room, "is Mr. Levine. He is my lead security auditor for the merger. He's here to ensure that the proprietary code we're acquiring from the sector isn't compromised. Travis took his seat at a smaller side table, his laptop already linked to the main display. He felt like a specimen under a microscope. Halfway through the presentation, a burly alpha vice president named Marcus slammed a hand on the table. "This is ridiculous, Austin. We're stalling the merger because of a security audit conducted by, what, a stray Omega you found. The boy looks like he'd faint if a server crashed." The room went silent. Marcus leaned back, radiating a heavy, musk-like scent intended to intimidate. He directed his gaze at Travis, his eyes narrowing. "Tell me, sweetheart, do you even know what an end-to-end encryption protocol is, or are you just here to look pretty in that suit?" Travis felt the blood drain from his face. The aggressive scent from Marcus was like a physical blow to his gut. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but his voice caught in his throat. Then, the air in the room changed. The scent of sandalwood didn't just rise, it exploded. It was a cold, suffocating wave of dominance that silenced every other pheromone in the room. Austin didn't stand up. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply turned his head slowly to look at Marcus. "Marcus," Austin said, his tone dangerously smooth. "The stray you're referring to found a hole in our private frequency that your entire IT department missed for 6 months. He isn't here to look pretty. He is here because he is mine, and his intellect is currently the only thing keeping this merger from becoming a lawsuit." The possessive weight of the word mine sent a shiver down Travis's spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the strange, terrifying bond forming between them. Austin's eyes flickered to Travis. "Levine. Show them the vulnerability in the third-quarter logs. Now." Spurred by the command, Travis's fingers flew across the keys. His fear crystallized into focus. He projected a heat map of data leaks onto the obsidian table. "There," Travis said, his voice gaining strength. "The leak isn't a server crash. It's a mirrored coordinate. Someone inside the acquisition target is funneling pings to a private server." He paused, glancing at the logs. His heart skipped a beat. The encryption style on the leak was familiar. Too familiar. It was the same messy, aggressive coding signature used by Kyle. Austin saw the flash of recognition in Travis's eyes. He stood up, the sandalwood scent turning sharp and predatory. "Meeting adjourned," he snapped. "Everyone out. Except for Mr. Levine." As the executives scrambled to leave, Marcus practically tripped over his chair to escape Austin's killing intent. When the doors finally clicked shut, the silence was heavy. Travis looked up to find Austin looming over him, his shadow stretching across the desk. "You recognize that code," Austin stated. It wasn't a question. He reached out, his hand hovering just inches from Travis's neck, the heat radiating from his palm. "Tell me who it belongs to, Travis. Before I decide you're still an accomplice." Chapter 5, The Leak. The air in Austin's private office was thick enough to choke on. The residual sandalwood from the boardroom had sharpened, turning into something cold and metallic. Travis sat frozen, his fingers still hovering over the keyboard as the glowing red lines of the data leak pulsed like a heartbeat on the monitor. "I'm waiting, Travis." Austin's voice was a low vibration. He didn't move, but the sheer weight of his alpha presence felt like a physical hand pressed against Travis's chest. It's the signature," Travis whispered, his osmanthus scent fluttering weakly. "The way the logic gates are bypassed. It's messy. Aggressive. It's Kyle." Austin's eyes narrowed, the blue depths turning to flint. "Your former client. The one who supposedly received a wrong number from you." "I didn't know." Travis cried, spinning his chair around to face the billionaire. "He hired me for a standard data mining project. He said it was for a startup. I had no idea he was siphoning Kingston's subsidiary analytics." Before Travis could blink, Austin was in his space. The alpha leaned down, bracing his hands on the arms of Travis's chair, effectively pinning him. The scent of sandalwood was overwhelming now, dark, woody, and dangerously possessive. "A mistake linked us, Travis," Austin murmured, his gaze dropping to Travis's trembling lips. "But if I find out you were the scout for his raid, there won't be a penthouse high enough to hide you from what I'll do." A sharp chime interrupted the tension. Travis's personal phone, the one Austin's team had sanitized but returned to him, was vibrating on the desk. The caller ID read, "Kyle." Travis's heart did a violent somersault. Austin straightened, his expression shifting into a mask of lethal calm. He gestured toward the phone with a flick of his chin. "Answer it. Put it on speaker." Travis's hand shook as he swiped the screen. "Travis. Where the hell have you been?" Kyle's voice barked through the speaker, accompanied by the sharp, familiar scent of cedarwood that Travis could almost smell through the digital transmission. "I saw the server logs. You pinged a Kingston blackbox line? Are you insane? You almost blew the whole operation." Travis looked up at Austin. The billionaire was perfectly still, watching him like a hawk. I made a mistake, Kyle," Travis said, his voice thin. "I'm out. I can't do this anymore." "You're not out until I get the rest of those encryption keys," Kyle snapped. "Listen to me, you little Omega. I know you're scared, but Kingston is a monster. He'll discard you the second he's bored. Send me the backdoor access to the penthouse servers by midnight, or I'm releasing the logs that prove you initiated the breach. You'll be the fall guy for the biggest corporate heist of the decade." The line went dead. The silence that followed was suffocating. Travis felt the walls closing in. He was caught between a predator he didn't know and a traitor he had once trusted. He looked at Austin, expecting to see a man ready to call the police. Instead, Austin was smiling. It wasn't a kind smile, it was the expression of a hunter who had just seen his prey walk into a snare. "He wants a backdoor?" Austin asked softly. He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of Travis's jaw, a possessive gesture that made the osmanthus scent in the room flare with a confused, frantic sweetness. "Mr. Kingston? Give it to him," Austin commanded. "But not the one he wants. We're going to give him a mirror. You're going to feed him exactly what I tell you to. By the time he realizes he's not stealing my data, he'll have handed us the keys to his own ruin." Austin leaned in closer, his sandalwood scent wrapping around Travis like a velvet shroud. "You're playing a dangerous game, Travis. But as long as you're on my board, I don't let my pieces be taken by anyone else." Travis realized then that he wasn't just a freelancer or a captive anymore. He was the bait. And Austin Kingston was about to snap the trap shut. Chapter 6, The Breaking Point. The penthouse was a tomb of glass and silence, illuminated only by the rhythmic pulsing of the server monitors. For hours, Travis had been a digital weaver, threading Austin's mirrored data into a trap for Kyle. The air was thick, not just with the heat of the processors, but with the suffocating, heavy scent of sandalwood that seemed to emanate from every shadow. Travis leaned back, his neck aching. His own scent, the sweet osmanthus, had turned weary and thin. He reached for a glass of water, but his hand was intercepted. Austin stood over him, his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up, revealing the powerful forearms of a man who didn't just command from a throne but took what he wanted. He didn't take the glass, he took Travis's wrist. "The upload is at 90%, Austin murmured. His voice was a low vibration that seemed to bypass Travis's ears and settle straight in his bones. "You've been remarkably efficient, Travis. Almost too efficient." Travis looked up, his heart skipping. "I told you. I'm not his partner. I'm just trying to survive this." "Are you?" Austin stepped closer, invading the small circle of light at the workstation. He looked down at the logs, then back at Travis. "Or are you waiting for the right moment to flip the switch?" To send my private encryption keys to Kyle instead of the mirrored ones? I wouldn't. I don't trust words, Travis. I trust patterns. Austin's grip on his wrist tightened, not enough to bruise, but enough to remind Travis of the physical disparity between them. And your pattern is one of a survivor. Survivors change sides when the wind blows. The accusation stung more than the grip. Travis stood up abruptly, forcing Austin to move back an inch. I have stayed in this glass cage. I have worked until my eyes bled for a man who treats me like a criminal. If I wanted to betray you, I would have done it the second you left the room. The osmanthus scent flared, bright, defiant, and floral. It clashed with the sandalwood, creating a volatile atmosphere that felt like a match held over a gas leak. Austin's eyes darkened. The cold-hearted mask didn't just slip, it shattered. In one fluid motion, he drove Travis back against the cold glass of the window. The city lights of the skyline twinkled hundreds of feet below them, a dizzying backdrop to the predatory intensity in Austin's gaze. You think you're a victim? Austin growled, his face inches from Travis's. You walked into my life and tore a hole in my security. You've occupied my thoughts, my space, and my scent since the moment I saw you on that floor. The sandalwood scent turned raw, primal and possessive. It was the smell of an alpha who had stopped calculating and started feeling. You're obsessed, Travis breathed, his breath hitching as Austin's hand moved from his wrist to his throat, his thumb tracing the frantic beat of Travis's pulse. I am a predator, Travis. And you are a mistake I've decided to keep. Austin's voice dropped to a whisper. Give me one reason why I shouldn't mark you right now. One reason why I should let you walk out of this room when the sun rises. Travis should have been terrified. He was trapped against a window at the top of the world by a man who could ruin him with a phone call. But as the sandalwood and osmanthus swirled together, a frantic, heat-filled chemistry took over. Travis didn't pull away. He leaned in, his forehead resting against Austin's. Because, Travis whispered, his voice trembling but steady. If you mark me out of rage, you'll never know if I stayed because I wanted to, or because I had to. The tension snapped. Austin didn't mark him, but he didn't let go either. He crushed his lips against Travis's in a kiss that tasted of desperation and dominance. It wasn't a romance, it was a collision. At that moment, the monitor behind them turned blood red. A siren blared, a low, digital hum. Alarm, backdoor initialized. Unfair access detected. Kyle had bitten the bait. But he hadn't just taken it, he was trying to pull the entire system down with him. Chapter 7, The Hostile Takeover. The penthouse transformed from a high-tech sanctuary into a digital war room. The alarm's low, rhythmic hum vibration through the floorboards, a physical manifestation of the siren screaming across the Kingston network. Red light bathed the marble walls, reflecting off the glass where Travis and Austin had been moments before. He's not just taking the data, Travis shouted over the noise, his fingers already blurring across the mechanical keyboard. He's using the mirror I built as a bridge. He's trying to wipe the core servers while he exits. Austin didn't panic. He stood behind Travis, one hand planted firmly on the back of the chair, his sandalwood scent shifting from the heat of the previous moment into something sharp and cold, the scent of a general on a battlefield. Kill the bridge, Austin commanded. I can't. If I hard kill the connection now, the feedback loop will fry the encrypted drives. We'll lose everything, the merger data, the private archives, all of it. Travis's osmanthus scent was frantic, thick with the sweat of high-stakes pressure. I have to counter-hack. I have to trace his physical location and lock his terminal from the outside. Do it, Austin said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. He tapped his earpiece. Simon? The trace is live. Get the extraction team to the coordinates the moment Levine pings them. And Simon? If he resists, break the hands he uses to type. Travis shivered at the coldness in Austin's tone, but he didn't slow down. He dove into the sea of scrolling green text, hunting for Kyle's digital fingerprint. On the screen, he could see Kyle, or rather, the ghost of Kyle, tearing through the Kingston firewalls. It was a brutal, scorched earth policy. Kyle wasn't a surgeon, he was a demolition expert. The cedarwood pheromones from their previous meeting seemed to haunt the very code Travis was fighting. He's using a VPN bounce through 5 different countries, Travis muttered, his eyes darting. But he's getting cocky. He's staying connected too long to watch the delete bar's progress. Check the original coordinate, Austin suggested, his hand moving to Travis's shoulder. The weight of it was grounding, a silent anchor in the digital storm. The one you mistyped. He thinks that's his lucky number. He'll use it as a port suffix. Travis gasped. You're right. He punched in the suffix, 0981. The screen flashed. Location identified, Industrial District, Warehouse 4B. I have him. Travis yelled. I'm locking his admin privileges, now. As Travis slammed the enter key, the red lights in the penthouse flipped back to a calm, steady white. The sirens cut out. The delete bars on the monitor froze at 88% and then vanished, replaced by a massive Kingston Industries logo. Got you, Travis whispered, leaning back. He was trembling, the adrenaline crash hitting him like a physical blow. Austin didn't look at the screen. He was looking at Travis. He pulled out his phone and made a single call. It's over. Pick him up. Ensure the police find the stolen drives in his car. He tucked the phone away and turned his full attention back to the Omega in the chair. The room was silent now, save for the hum of the cooling fans. The tension from the boardroom, the leak, and the chase had all funneled down into this narrow space between them. Suddenly, Travis felt a wave of dizziness. The frantic energy of the last few hours hadn't just been adrenaline. The proximity to Austin's overwhelming alpha scent, combined with the extreme stress of the hack, had pushed his body over a threshold. A sweet, cloying heat began to radiate from his skin, the unmistakable, early bloom of a stress-induced heat. The osmanthus scent in the room became intoxicating, heavy with a biological invitation that Travis couldn't retract. Austin's pupils dilated. His predatory instincts, already heightened by the kill of the corporate war, locked onto the change. He reached down, his fingers tangling in Travis's hair, tilting his head back to expose the pale, pulsing line of his throat. The war is over, Travis, Austin murmured, his sandalwood scent turning dark and hungry. But you're still in my penthouse. And your body is telling a very different story than your tongue. Travis gripped Austin's forearms, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The contract. We won. I should go. The contract said you stay until I say you're done, Austin reminded him, his thumb brushing against Travis's scent gland. And I think we're just getting started. Chapter 8, No Escape. The morning sun bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, casting long, golden bars across the marble floor. The digital war was over. The screens that had pulsed with red warnings were now dark, silent monitors reflecting the calm after a storm. Travis sat on the edge of the oversized bed, his fingers trembling as he buttoned the charcoal shirt Elle had brought him days ago. His scent, the sweet, lingering osmanthus, was muted now, a soft echo of the frantic heat that had consumed the room only hours before. In the kitchen, the clink of a porcelain cup against a saucer was the only sound. Travis stood up, his legs still feeling a bit like lead, and walked toward the living area. Austin Kingston was standing by the window, a cup of black coffee in hand. He had changed into a fresh white dress shirt, the top buttons undone, looking every bit the predatory tycoon who had just successfully swallowed a rival. The sandalwood scent he radiated was no longer a weapon, it was a steady, grounding presence that filled the entire penthouse. The police processed Kyle an hour ago, Austin said without turning around. They found the encrypted drives in his glove box, just as I said they would. His career is over. He'll be lucky if he's out of a cell before he's 50. Travis leaned against the marble kitchen island. And the merger? Proceeding ahead of schedule. The board is calling the security catch a masterstroke of foresight. Austin finally turned, his icy blue eyes locking onto Travis. A faint, knowing smirk touched his lips. I didn't correct them. Travis looked down at his hands. So, it's done. The debt is paid. I found the leak, I fixed the breach, and Kyle is handled. He took a breath, trying to ignore the way his heart stuttered under Austin's gaze. I should probably go back to my apartment. See if my door is still hanging off its hinges. He started toward the foyer where his battered canvas bag sat waiting. He reached for the strap, but a heavy hand landed on the wall beside his head, blocking his path. Austin hadn't moved quickly, but he was suddenly there, looming over Travis with that same suffocating, magnetic intensity. You're going back to a studio apartment with a broken lock and a freelance career that's currently tied to a criminal investigation? Austin's voice was a low, dangerous silk. I'll figure it out, Travis whispered. I'm a survivor, remember? A survivor doesn't walk back into a burning building, Travis. Austin reached out, his thumb catching Travis's chin and tilting his face up. The sandalwood scent sharpened, wrapping around the osmanthus until there was no space left between them. I've spent my life acquiring assets. Companies. Land. Power. But I've never had a mistake turn into something I couldn't delete from my mind. Austin. You aren't leaving, Austin stated. It wasn't a request, it was an executive order. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek, black folder, tossing it onto the foyer table. Travis opened it with shaking fingers. It wasn't a police report or an NDA. It was a contract for a permanent position as the head of sovereign security for Kingston Industries, with a signing bonus that could buy his old apartment building 10 times over. At the bottom, there was a secondary clause, written in Austin's sharp, authoritative script: residential residency at Kingston penthouse required for Tier 1 security clearance. This is... Travis looked up, breathless. This is a trap. It's an investment, Austin corrected, leaning in until his lips brushed against Travis's ear. You pinged my private line, Travis. You invited a predator into your world. Did you really think I'd just let my favorite target walk away? Travis looked at the contract, then at the man who had become his entire world in the span of a few days. The cold-hearted billionaire wasn't letting him go, he was building a golden cage and calling it a career. What if I don't sign? Travis challenged, though his voice lacked conviction. Austin's hand moved to the back of Travis's neck, his fingers tangling in the hair there, claiming him. Then I suppose I'll have to find another wrong number to track you down again. But we both know how this ends. The osmanthus scent flared one last time, not in fear, but in a sweet, surrendered bloom. Travis realized that in Austin's world, there were truly no mistakes. There were only targets. And as Travis picked up the pen, he realized he didn't want to escape anymore. Epilogue: The Architect of the Cage. 6 months later, the 88th floor of the Kingston Global headquarters had undergone a subtle, botanical transformation. The sterile, cold scent of industrial glass and filtered air had been permanently replaced by the soft, persistent bloom of osmanthus. Travis Levine didn't scurry through the halls anymore. He walked them with the quiet, terrifying confidence of a man who held the master keys to the city's most powerful digital fortress. Mr. Levine, Simon said, stepping aside to hold the heavy mahogany door to the executive suite. The beta's voice was pitched with a new level of genuine respect. The chairman is in a difficult mood. The merger with the European sector is hitting a wall. Travis offered a small, knowing smile. Is he? I'll handle it, Simon. Inside, the atmosphere was pressurized. Austin Kingston stood behind his obsidian desk, his sandalwood scent sharp enough to cut. He was currently tearing into a senior VP via speakerphone, his voice a low, lethal blade that had the man on the other end stuttering in terror. Travis didn't wait for the call to end. He walked straight to the espresso machine in the corner, humming softly. Austin's eyes snapped to him. The predatory flint in his gaze didn't vanish, but the jagged edge of his scent immediately smoothed out, rounding into something warmer, almost protective. He abruptly cut the call mid-sentence. "I wasn't finished, Travis," Austin said, though he was already moving around the desk toward him. "You were repeating yourself, Austin." "It's inefficient," Travis replied, not looking up as he frothed the milk. "Besides, you're stressing the staff. Elle looks like she's about to resign, and she's the only one who knows how you like your filing organized." Austin loomed behind him, his presence as massive and overwhelming as the day they met. He wrapped an arm around Travis's waist, pulling him back against his chest. "I'll hire 10 more L's. I want that merger finalized by tonight." Travis turned in his arms, resting his hands on Austin's lapels. He had learned the language of this alpha, the micro-twitches of his jaw, the way his scent deepened when he was being stubborn versus when he was actually angry. "If you close the office at 5 and take me to that gallery opening in the district," Travis murmured, his fingers playing with Austin's silk tie, "I'll show you the backdoor exploit I found in their firewall. It'll give you the leverage you need to settle by noon tomorrow." Austin narrowed his eyes. "You're negotiating with me? Using company intel as a bargaining chip for a date? I'm an asset, remember?" Travis stood on his tiptoes, his nose brushing against Austin's. "And currently, the asset wants a night out." The cold-hearted predator held out for exactly 3 seconds before he let out a frustrated, defeated huff. He leaned down, burying his face in the crook of Travis's neck, inhaling the osmanthus deeply. 5 o'clock, Austin growled, his voice vibrating against Travis's skin. "But you're wearing the blue suit. The one that matches the bedroom decor." "Deal," Travis smirked. As Austin went back to his desk, already checking his watch to ensure he'd be ready by 5, Travis caught his own reflection in the window. The golden cage was still there, but the bars were now draped in fine silks and the best tech money could buy. Travis hadn't just survived the obsession of a billionaire alpha, he had mapped the interior of the predator's heart and redesigned it. He wasn't a captive anymore, he was the one who decided when the doors stayed locked and when they flew open. Mistyping that text message hadn't been his downfall. It had been his greatest acquisition.